So many Americans are closely watching the latest developments around Social Security. People are asking, wondering, sometimes even panicking a bit. Will there be a Social Security increase this year? Is the government finally going to step up with something meaningful? Or are we just going to keep hearing vague promises and political noise without real change? These are not just casual questions. For millions of seniors, for people with disabilities, and for those on fixed incomes, this is about survival. And let me tell you, what's happening behind closed doors in D.C. may surprise you. Because even though some officials are pushing for increases, and even though the pressure is rising, the outcome is not guaranteed. And what's more, there's now a very real possibility that we may see either a big sweeping reform or absolutely nothing at all. Now, over the past several weeks, I've spoken with multiple sources, some of whom are aides to sitting senators, others who work in policy research, and the tone has shifted. There's a sense of urgency, yes, but there's also a growing fear among lawmakers that Social Security reform could become so politically risky, so polarizing, that unless it's a major, all-inclusive package, nobody will want to touch it. And that's the dilemma we're in. For the average American, that means one thing. Either you see a real bump in your benefits this year, or you get nothing but continued inflation eating away at the same check you've been getting. And what's pushing this urgency now is not just politics, it's economics. Inflation has not gone away. Prices for food, gas, utilities, and prescription medications continue to rise. Seniors feel it the hardest. And when you're on a fixed income, every dollar matters. If your Social Security check is worth less and less each month in terms of purchasing power, you're essentially watching your life shrink right before your eyes. That's why so many people are asking, is there anything coming that could help ease that pressure? One of the proposals making rounds again is a potential change in how the cost of living adjustment, also known as COLA, is calculated. Right now, it's based on CPI-W, which is a consumer price index for urban wage earners. But many economists and senior advocates argue that this doesn't reflect the reality of retirees, who spend more on healthcare, housing, and daily essentials. That's why there's renewed interest in switching to the CPI-E index, which is geared more toward elderly households. If adopted, this could mean slightly higher annual increases in benefits over time. It's not revolutionary, but it's something. And here's the kicker. Some lawmakers are saying if they're going to make a move on Social Security, this kind of shift is the most likely candidate. It's less politically risky than simply boosting checks across the board, and it's easier to explain to voters. But here's where it gets complicated, because just a few months ago, Congress passed a limited reform package, a narrow piece of legislation that affected about 3 million Social Security recipients. And now, many lawmakers are using that as a reason to pump the brakes on anything new. I spoke with an aide to a senior senator who said, bluntly, "We already did something for Social Security this year. If we go back too soon with more changes, we lose momentum for other priorities." That mindset is dangerous because while it may be politically convenient, it ignores the fact that the vast majority of Social Security recipients, tens of millions of Americans, are still waiting for help. They're still struggling with the same issues that existed before that limited reform passed. Now let's talk about something that's adding even more tension to this debate: tariffs. Yes, believe it or not, international trade policy is now directly tied into the Social Security conversation. In recent speeches and policy proposals, former President Trump has made it clear tariffs are back on the table in a big way. A 50% tariff on Brazilian imports was recently announced, triggering a retaliatory move by Brazil. Some advisors are now suggesting a potential 200% tariff on imported pharmaceuticals. Think about what that means. It could result in skyrocketing prices for medications, many of which are essential for seniors. It would also hit everyday consumer goods, including groceries and household staples. And who suffers most when prices spike unexpectedly? Seniors, people on fixed incomes, people whose monthly budgets don't have any room for surprises. So now you have lawmakers quietly acknowledging this. They know that rising prices caused by tariffs could devastate people relying on Social Security. But rather than scaling back the tariffs or building in protections, some are floating a new idea, redirecting a portion of the revenue from these tariffs toward Social Security funding. In theory, this sounds appealing. You slap a penalty on foreign countries, collect revenue, and use that money to support American retirees. It's patriotic, it's financially clever, and it could win over voters on both sides of the aisle. But in practice, it's full of holes. There's no guarantee that tariff revenue would be consistent enough to support something as critical as Social Security. And what happens when trade partners retaliate even more aggressively, shrinking exports and raising costs for everyone? Despite all this, there's genuine debate happening in some corners of Capitol Hill. Some lawmakers want to introduce a package that includes the COLA formula change, a small monthly benefit bump, and possibly even retroactive payments going back a few years. That last one is ambitious. The idea is to make people whole after years of inadequate COLA increases that failed to keep pace with real inflation. But it's controversial. Critics argue it would speed up the projected insolvency of the Social Security Trust Fund. And let's be clear, that fund is already on shaky ground. The most recent projections say that unless something is done, the trust fund could be depleted within the next decade, leading to automatic benefit cuts of up to 20%. Nobody wants that. But not everyone agrees on how to prevent it. Some conservatives are proposing adjustments to the payroll tax system. As it stands, employees and employers each contribute 6.2% for a total of 12.4% of eligible wages. Some suggest raising the cap on taxable income. Right now, earnings over roughly $168,000 aren't taxed for Social Security. Increasing or removing that cap would raise billions, possibly extending the life of the program without cutting benefits. But others worry that doing so would alienate middle and upper income earners, creating a new set of political challenges. Meanwhile, progressives want to see a more aggressive approach, boosting monthly benefits across the board, expanding eligibility, and funding it through new taxes on the wealthy and corporations. Their argument is simple. Social Security is not welfare. It's an earned benefit. People have paid into it their entire working lives. They deserve dignity in retirement. But again, these proposals face resistance. Some lawmakers, especially those in tight re-election races, don't want to be seen as raising taxes or adding to the deficit. So we're stuck in this strange political tug-of-war. Everyone agrees something needs to be done. Nobody can agree on what that something should be. And let's not ignore the role public pressure plays here. Every time there's a hint of a Social Security increase or a policy leak, thousands of comments pour into lawmakers' offices. Social media explodes with rumors. YouTube channels and news outlets go viral with speculation. And that's part of the problem, too. People are overwhelmed by mixed messages. One day they hear benefits might go up by 10%, the next day they're told the system might collapse. That kind of uncertainty is exhausting, especially for people who are already living month to month. And what many of them want, more than anything, is just honesty, real answers, clear, direct communication from the government. As it stands right now, the odds of a small COLA-based adjustment happening before the end of the year are decent. It's the lowest hanging fruit politically. But anything beyond that, any real increase, any meaningful reform, that's going to take a major, unified push. And the longer Congress waits, the harder that becomes. Because in a few short months, we're entering another election cycle. And you know what happens then. Every decision becomes a political calculation. Nobody wants to take risks. Everyone wants to play it safe and win votes. So if there's no major Social Security bill introduced and passed soon, we may have to wait until after the next election to see anything meaningful. And that, unfortunately, is the core truth right now. There is no guaranteed increase. There is no certainty. Only possibilities, rumors, conversations behind closed doors, and a ticking clock. The best-case scenario? Lawmakers put aside their partisan differences and pass a package that updates the COLA formula, boosts benefits for the most vulnerable, and secures the long-term health of the program. The worst case? More delays, more excuses. And a growing population of seniors left to fend for themselves as inflation eats away at their quality of life. For those of you watching this, I know how frustrating this must be. You've paid into this system your entire life. You've done everything right. And now, when it's time for the system to take care of you, it feels like the support is fading. But here's what I'll say. Don't give up hope. There are still people in government fighting for real solutions. There are still proposals on the table that could help. But it's going to take all of us speaking up, staying informed, and pushing for action to make sure those solutions become reality. So that's the latest on the Social Security increase news. As always, I'll continue monitoring every development, every legislative proposal, every backroom negotiation, and I'll bring you the truth. No spin, no hype, just the real situation as it unfolds. Because you deserve to know what's really going on. You deserve clarity. And more importantly, you deserve results. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next update.